This is the building that originally was the residence for the priests who were associated with the St. John's Episcopal Church. And this house was built for the use of their families while it was on the green. Eventually, when they no longer wanted the house, it was moved to Hartford and Stafford, where the public library is now. So when the Historical Society purchased the building, it came to us all subdivided, not looking anything like this. So this is kind of a reimagination. So we have two major collections and then a lot of other individual donations. The beginning of one of the collections is reflected with this little group of stone bisque dolls that were given as favors at a birthday party for Miss Helen Schettinger. Our idea is, although we have an encyclopedic collection, to always showcase both the things that were played with in Worthington and the context of them. A little girl named Mary Ellen Minton gave us her doll, and this is a very nice German doll that she would have received in the early 1900s, and her uncle owned the millinery down on Spring Street. We have some teddies, we have a very early Raggedy Ann. This is what she looked like in the beginning. And we have other famous characters, and of course Snow White, Pinocchio. These dolls have been given to us one at a time by people who've kept them all this time. And these are the dolls from the 19th century, from the 1800s. The earliest dolls are the little tiny ones over here. And most of the dolls were collected by Mrs. George Brinton Chandler, who was a resident of Bexley. In her lifetime, she collected well over 600 dolls. At the time of her death, her two daughters divided the collection. It was owned then by Nationwide, but they sent one half of the collection to the Shelburne Museum in Vermont, and they were looking for another place for this half of the collection to go. One daughter wanted to be back in Worthington with her half of the collection. Was that her mother bought this doll as the beginning of her collection. And perhaps all collectors remember the first thing they collected that got them going. And she bought this at the site of the Orange Johnson house when it was privately owned, and that got her started. The dolls that you're looking at now are the French fashion dolls. These are the very fancy dolls that were made in Paris, and a very lucky girl might have a doll with a huge trunk full of clothing. She has her bath soap, perfume bottles, and then we have wax dolls up here, and we have what are affectionately known as milliner's models. These dolls may have worn dresses that were shipped from various fashion centers to show what the current fashion was. Our most interesting doll perhaps is this one made by the female doll maker named Izana Walker. She has a cloth body and all of her fingers and toes are hand sewn, and this one is all in her original clothing. The rag dolls would be the kind of dolls that you could make at home. And of course, if you were making clothing at home, you could make dolls, and girls would be encouraged to make things that would be fun for them to make, to learn to stitch very small. This is an ongoing project with us. We have a few of our things and we borrow some other things and feature one particular type or style of doll or dollhouse. Right now we have beautiful babies. So some of them belong to the Doll Museum, to the Historical Society Doll Museum, and some belong to a private collector who has generously allowed some of them to come. In about 1910, they started making character babies that were not idealized babies. So the baby you're looking at right now is the Kaiser Baby, and he's probably the one that jumps out the fastest, but some of them look very realistic and have very realistic expressions, and they are the character babies.